Winter 2025 didn't just arrive in these towns, it kicked the door in, stole the heat, and dared people to survive out of spite. These aren't the cute snow globe winters Instagram lies to you about. This is the kind of cold that makes your car give up emotionally, your pipes start plotting against you, and locals stare at newcomers like, "You chose this? 10 U.S. Towns got absolutely humbled this winter, and if you're thinking of moving, retiring, or even stopping for gas, yeah, maybe don't. Every winter, America pretends it's prepared. Salt trucks roll out, weather apps act confident, and then reality shows up wearing steel-toe boots and a wind chill that feels personal. This list exists because nobody tells you the truth about winter towns, especially the ones that look cheap, quiet, or peaceful. Cheap rent always has a cosigner, and sometimes that cosigner is 6 months of darkness and a heating bill that feels like fraud. We're talking towns where winter 2025 didn't just inconvenience people, it changed behavior. Schools shut down, roads disappeared, locals started warning outsiders unprompted, which is never a good sign. We'll cover places where the cold overstayed its welcome, snow became a full-time job, and survival turned into a personality trait. Like the video if you enjoy watching geography bully people. Subscribe if you enjoy learning lessons the easy way by not moving there. City 1. International Falls, Minnesota. International Falls doesn't call itself the icebox of the nation as a joke. It's not branding. It's a warning label. Winter 2025 showed up here like it had unfinished business, and the town responded by quietly enduring it, the way people do when complaining wastes energy. You need to stay alive. Here's the price shock. Homes here sell for less than a used pickup truck with trust issues. We're talking real houses, roofs, walls, emotional baggage included, for prices that make Zillow feel broken. And that's because the town sits way up near the Canadian border. Where the cold doesn't visit, it lives there full-time and pays rent. Population hovers around 6,000 people, most of whom have mastered the art of dressing in layers that could survive space. The geography is flat, forested, and brutally honest. There's no mountain drama, no coastal moderation, just open land and wind that slaps your soul sideways. The local economy leans on paper mills, manufacturing, and the kind of jobs where showing up late in winter is considered an act of rebellion. Why is it so cheap? Because winter here isn't seasonal, it's philosophical. In 2025, temperatures dropped so low that exposed skin became a liability. Cars refused to start out of principle. Snowbanks reached heights that made children question depth perception. And when the sun disappears at 4 p.m., time itself starts feeling optional. Living here means accepting that grocery runs require planning, courage, and sometimes a backup plan. Wildlife doesn't fear humans. Moose wander through town like they pay taxes. Infrastructure works, but only because it's overbuilt for punishment. Shopping options exist, but options is doing a lot of work in that sentence. And yet, locals stay. There's a strange pride in surviving here. A quiet charm in knowing your neighbors because winter forces community whether you like it or not. It's peaceful, affordable, and brutally authentic. But if you hate cold, darkness, or the idea of weather as a recurring boss fight, this town will absolutely humble you. City 2. Barrow, Alaska. Barrow isn't just cold, it's conceptually hostile to human comfort. Winter 2025 didn't hit this town, it occupied it. This is the northernmost town in the United States, which means geography already had beef with it before the snow even started falling. Here's the price shock. Houses here cost less than you'd expect for something that has to function in Arctic conditions, yet still somehow feel overpriced once you realize what they're up against. Population sits around 4,400 people, and every single one of them deserves a medal for endurance. The town is perched on the edge of the Arctic Ocean, flat as a pancake, fully exposed, with nothing blocking wind that feels like it was designed by someone who hates lips. Winter 2025 delivered weeks of sustained sub-zero temperatures, with wind chills that made weather apps stop using numbers and start using warnings. The sun disappeared for months, not figuratively, literally gone. You wake up in darkness, go to work in darkness, and return home in darkness wondering if Tuesday still exists? Seasonal depression doesn't creep in here. It shows up immediately and asks for your lunch money. Why is it cheap? Because logistics are a nightmare. No roads connect Utqiagvik to the rest of Alaska. Everything arrives by plane or barge, which means groceries cost like they're imported from the moon. A simple shopping trip can feel like a budgeting seminar. Milk prices cause emotional reactions. Fresh produce becomes a luxury item with bragging rights. Living here means adjusting to a pace of life that feels suspended in ice. Infrastructure is functional but fragile. Pipes are elevated because the ground is permanently frozen, and when something breaks in winter, we'll fix it later. Isn't laziness, it's survival math. Wildlife isn't cute. Polar bears are nearby, and they don't care about your personal growth journey. And yet, there's something quietly powerful about Utqiagvik. Tight-knit community, deep indigenous culture, and resilience baked into daily life. But let's be honest. If winter already makes you grumpy, this place will emotionally uninstall you. It's fascinating, affordable relative to its isolation, and unforgettable. But winter 2025 proved this town is not a challenge. It's a lifestyle test. City 3. Bismarck, North Dakota. Bismarck looks harmless on a map. Calm, central, almost polite. Winter 2025 absolutely destroyed that illusion. This is the kind of town where the cold doesn't announce itself. It just shows up early, overstays, and breaks things out of boredom. Price shock first. You can still buy a full-sized house here for less than what people in coastal cities spend arguing with landlords. The population sits around 75,000, which sounds respectable until winter hits and the city starts operating like a survival outpost. Geographically, Bismarck sits right in the Great Plains, which is another way of saying it's a wind testing facility disguised as a capital city. Winter 2025 was relentless. Snowstorms stacked on each other like unpaid bills. Temperatures dropped low enough that cars didn't just fail, they refused. Locals ran extension cords across parking lots to keep engines warm, which looks insane until you realize it's either that or walk everywhere like a pioneer with Wi-Fi. The wind here doesn't blow, it interrogates you, sideways, repeatedly. Why is it cheap? Because winter is long, loud, and deeply inconvenient. The economy leans on government, healthcare, and energy, which keeps jobs stable but doesn't soften the weather's attitude. Roads exist, but snowdrifts turn familiar routes into obstacle courses. Schools shut down not because of snow, but because wind chills made outside air legally offensive. Living reality? Shopping options are fine, but getting to them feels like a side quest. The pace of life slows to a crawl, not because people are lazy, but because rushing in winter is how you end up on the news. Wildlife watches from a distance. Infrastructure works, but only because it's been reinforced out of trauma. And yet, people stay. There's a strange calm beneath the chaos. Neighbors help neighbors. Things feel affordable, stable, and grounded. But winter 2025 made one thing very clear. If you don't respect the cold here, it will absolutely embarrass you. Bismarck isn't unlivable, it's just extremely honest about who it's for. City 4. Marquette, Michigan. Marquette is one of those towns people romanticize right up until winter actually happens. Lake views, cozy vibes, outdoorsy charm. Winter 2025 heard all that optimism and took it personally. This is a town on Michigan's Upper Peninsula, which means it gets weather straight off Lake Superior, a body of water so cold it feels emotionally distant. Here's the price shock. Homes here are still relatively affordable, especially compared to southern Michigan or anything near a major metro. You can buy a solid house for less than what people pay to feel inspired in trendier cities. Population sits around 21,000, boosted by Northern Michigan University students who arrive optimistic in August and emotionally renegotiate their life choices by February. Geographically, Marquette is beautiful and cursed. Forests, cliffs, shoreline, and lake-effect snow that doesn't fall so much as accumulate aggressively. Winter 2025 dumped snow in layers, repeatedly, with no regard for cleanup schedules or morale. Streets narrowed. Sidewalks vanished. Snowbanks grew so tall they started blocking sightlines like environmental jump scares. Why is it cheap? Because winter dominates the calendar. Snowstorms roll in unpredictably. Temperatures hover in that cruel range where it's cold enough to hurt but not cold enough to stay dry. Everything is damp, frozen, and loud, boots squeaking, wind howling, ice cracking like it's talking trash. Heating bills spike and daylight becomes a rumor. Living here means adjusting expectations. Grocery stores exist, but getting there feels like a minor expedition. Wildlife is bold, Deer and foxes wander through neighborhoods like they're scouting real estate. Infrastructure holds up, but plows are in a constant losing battle against physics. Shopping options are limited, and Amazon deliveries start testing your patience and your faith. And still, people love it. There's a rugged pride here, a sense that if you survive winter, you've earned the rest of the year. Summer is stunning. Community is real. But winter 2025 reminded everyone that Marquette's charm comes with a contract, and that contract is written in snow, wind, and stubborn endurance. City 5. Duluth, Minnesota. Duluth looks like a postcard until winter reminds you it's actually a stress test. Perched along Lake Superior, this town spends half the year proving that gravity, ice, and wind can absolutely collaborate against you. Winter 2025 didn't just show up here, it put the city on expert mode. Here's the price shock. Duluth is cheaper than it looks. You can buy a real house with a view of the lake for less than what people pay to stare at a parking lot in major metros. Population sits around 86,000, which sounds lively until winter compresses everyone indoors and the city starts operating on survival vibes. Geography is the problem child here. Steep hills plus lake-effect snow is a combo that feels illegal. Winter 2025 turned streets into ice slides with opinions. Cars didn't just struggle uphill, they negotiated. Locals threw sand like confetti and still watched vehicles surrender halfway up. Sidewalks became abstract concepts. The wind off Lake Superior is cold in a way that feels intentional, like it's trying to teach you a lesson about arrogance. Why is it cheap? Because winter is relentless and physical. Snow doesn't melt, it moves. It drifts sideways, piles into corners, and reappears where you just cleared it, like it's mocking you. The economy leans on shipping, healthcare, education, and tourism. But winter tourism is basically, come here if you enjoy suffering with scenery. Macateldis, living reality is a mix of grit and dark humor. Grocery runs require traction, patience, and sometimes alternate routes. Infrastructure exists, but it's constantly under assault by ice expansion and freeze-thaw chaos. Wildlife watches from wooded edges, judging your footwear choices. Shopping options are decent, but winter limits how often you'll emotionally commit to leaving the house. And yet, Duluth has heart. People are tough, kind, and quietly proud of surviving conditions that would make other cities shut down completely. Summer is incredible. Fall is cinematic. But winter 2025 reminded everyone that living here means signing up for months of cold. That doesn't negotiate. It challenges you. City 6. Buffalo, New York. Buffalo has spent years trying to rebrand itself. Food scene, waterfront revival, we're back energy. Winter 2025 took one look at that optimism and buried it under 7 feet of lake-effect snow, like it was unfinished business. This town doesn't get winter storms, it specializes in them. Here's the price shock. Buffalo is still one of the cheapest real cities in the Northeast. You can buy a legit house here for less than what people pay for studio apartments that come with shared trauma elsewhere. Population sits around 275,000, which sounds solid until a storm hits and half the city becomes geographically theoretical. Buffalo sits downwind of Lake Erie, which is basically a snow factory with a grudge. Winter 2025 delivered storms that didn't politely pass through, they parked. Snow fell so fast plows couldn't keep up, then wind rearranged everything just to stay petty. Some neighborhoods were fine, others looked like they'd been selected for a weather experiment. This is lake effect roulette, and Buffalo plays every year whether it wants to or not. Why is it cheap? Because winter chaos is localized and unpredictable. One side of town might be clear, the other completely immobilized. Roads vanish, cars disappear. Schools close not because of inches of snow, but because visibility drops to guess and hope. The economy leans on healthcare, education, logistics, and manufacturing. Stable, yes, but winter productivity takes a hit whether spreadsheets like it or not. Living reality here means accepting that winter is loud and inconvenient. Snowblowers become status symbols. Neighbors help each other dig out because eventually it'll be your turn. Infrastructure is battle-tested but constantly strained. Shopping options are great, assuming you can physically reach them. The pace of life slows, tempers shorten, and patience becomes a learned skill. And yet, Buffalo people are built different. There's pride in surviving storms that make national news. Community shows up. Summers are beautiful. Food is elite. But winter 2025 reminded everyone that cheap housing here comes with a co-payment, paid in snow, wind, and canceled plans. City 7, Fargo, North Dakota. Fargo markets itself as quirky, friendly, and affordable, and all of that is technically true until winter shows up and flips the table. Winter 2025 didn't just stress this town, it reintroduced it to humility. Fargo isn't dramatic about the cold. It just lets it happen and watches who survives. Price shock first. Fargo is still absurdly affordable for a functioning city. Real houses, real yards, real mortgages that don't feel like a prank. Population sits around 125,000, boosted by universities and a steady job base. On paper, it looks like one of the Midwest's smartest bargains. On the ground, in January, it looks like an Arctic simulator. Geographically, Fargo sits on flat Red River Valley land, which means there's absolutely nothing to stop the wind. No hills, no trees with confidence, just open space where air accelerates out of spite. Winter 2025 brought sustained sub-zero temperatures that didn't fluctuate. They settled in. The cold wasn't dramatic, it was consistent, which somehow made it worse. Why is it cheap? Because this winter lasts forever. Snow piles up and just stays. Cars run constantly or not at all. Frostbite becomes a casual topic of conversation. Walking across a parking lot feels like a timed event. The economy is solid, healthcare, education, logistics, tech, but none of that changes the fact that your face hurts when exposed. Living reality here means planning everything. You don't pop out to run errands, you strategize. Infrastructure works, but winter turns basic tasks into endurance tests. Shopping options are good, but motivation disappears when the air temperature feels personal. Wildlife stays away, mostly because even animals respect the conditions. And yet, Fargo is strangely livable. People are kind, community is strong, summers are genuinely great. But winter 2025 reminded everyone that affordability here is earned. This town doesn't ask if you like the cold, it assumes you'll adapt or leave. City 8, Fairbanks, Alaska. Fairbanks doesn't experience winter. It hosts it year-round like an uninvited guest that never leaves. Winter 2025 didn't surprise anyone here, which somehow makes it worse. This town wakes up every year already bracing for impact, and somehow the cold still finds new ways to be disrespectful. Here's the price shock. Fairbanks is shockingly affordable for a city that regularly hits temperatures that sound fictional. You can buy a real detached house for less than what people elsewhere spend on rent while arguing with a landlord about mold. Population sits around 32,000, spread out across a landscape that feels more like a science experiment than a town. It's interior Alaska, far from oceans, far from moderation, and fully exposed to cold that doesn't negotiate. Winter 2025 delivered weeks of deep freeze that made engines cry. Temperatures dropped so low that metal snapped, breath crystallized instantly, and cars had to be plugged in like emotional support devices. The sun barely showed up, and when it did, it felt symbolic, like a motivational quote rather than actual warmth. Darkness here doesn't feel cozy, it feels administrative. Why is it cheap? Because living here requires commitment bordering on obsession. The economy leans on government, military, education, and energy. Stable, yes, but none of that changes the fact that winter dictates everything. Pipes freeze, tires harden, electronics get temperamental, outside time becomes optional, and optimism becomes seasonal. Living reality is intense. Grocery stores exist, but fresh produce feels like a flex. Infrastructure works only because it's engineered for abuse. Wildlife is not decorative. Moose wander through neighborhoods like they own the place, and honestly, they kind of do. Shopping options are limited, entertainment is indoors, and the pace of life slows to whatever speed keeps you alive. And yet, Fairbanks has soul. Northern lights, real community, and a sense that everyone here understands something outsiders don't. But winter 2025 made one thing very clear. Affordability here isn't a bargain, it's a trade. And the currency is cold, darkness, and endurance. City 9, Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Sault Ste. Marie feels like a town that accidentally wandered too far north and then just decided to stay. Winter 2025 did not reward that decision. This place sits right where Lake Superior starts flexing into Lake Huron, which means it gets hit with cold, wind, and lake-effect snow from multiple directions, like weather couldn't decide how to punish it. Here's the price shock. Homes here are almost suspiciously cheap. You can buy a full house for less than what people in warmer states spend remodeling a bathroom. Population hovers around 13,000, and by winter it feels smaller, quieter, and slightly haunted. Not abandoned, just deeply indoors. Geography is the real villain. Water on both sides means moisture, wind, and snow that arrives horizontally like it's angry. Winter 2025 was relentless. Snow didn't fall. It accumulated aggressively and refused to leave. Temperature stayed low enough that salt trucks worked overtime and still looked defeated. The wind off the water cuts through layers like it has personal beef with your jacket. Ice builds everywhere. Sidewalks, cars, railings, your sense of optimism. Why is it cheap? Because winter here is long and isolating. The local economy leans on healthcare, government, cross-border logistics, and tourism that disappears the moment snow becomes structural. Roads remain open, but driving feels like a trust exercise. Power flickers, internet slows, and when something breaks, repairs move on. Upper Peninsula time, which is polite code for eventually. Living reality means adjusting your expectations downward. Shopping options are limited, and winter turns a quick errand into a commitment. Wildlife wanders in casually. Deer treat neighborhoods like shortcuts. Infrastructure works, but only because it's constantly being patched, plowed, and emotionally supported by locals who've accepted this as normal. And yet, there's a stubborn charm here. Strong community, beautiful summers, deep history. But winter 2025 reminded everyone that this town's affordability comes with isolation baked in. If you need convenience, sunlight, or fast answers, this place will quietly test your patience until you either adapt or leave. City 10. Watertown, New York. Watertown is one of those towns people discover accidentally, usually while looking for cheap houses upstate and wondering why Zillow feels broken. Winter 2025 explained exactly why. This place sits near Lake Ontario and the Canadian border, which means it exists in a permanent state of lake effect uncertainty. Snow here doesn't follow forecasts, it follows vibes. Price shock first. Watertown is ridiculously affordable. Full houses with yards sell for prices that feel like typos. Population is around 24,000, boosted by Fort Drum nearby, which means a steady military presence and a rotating cast of people who arrive optimistic and leave with stories. Geographically, the town is flat, exposed, and perfectly positioned to receive snow that Lake Ontario manufactures out of spite. Winter 2025 was brutal. Storms rolled in back-to-back, dumping feet of snow in short bursts, then letting wind rearrange it like furniture. Some days you'd wake up thinking the storm missed you, then step outside and realize your car had been erased. The cold wasn't just low, it was damp, sneaky, and exhausting, the kind that soaks into your bones and refuses to leave. Why is it cheap? Because winter dominates everything. Snow removal becomes a second job. Roads technically exist, but visibility turns driving into a guessing game. The economy relies on the military, healthcare, and small manufacturing. Stable, but not exactly glamorous. When winter hits, productivity slows, and patience becomes the town's most valuable resource. Living reality here means isolation creeps in fast. Shopping options are limited, and winter makes travel feel optional at best. Infrastructure works, but storms push it to the edge. Wildlife stays mostly out of sight, probably because even they know better. The pace of life becomes slow, quiet, and deeply indoors. And yet, Watertown has resilience. People help each other dig out. Summers are green and peaceful. Costs stay low. But winter 2025 made one thing painfully clear. This town's affordability is directly tied to how much cold, snow, and inconvenience you're willing to tolerate without complaining. Winter 2025 didn't just expose these towns, it explained them. Cheap housing, quiet streets, and hidden gem listings always come with a reason. And sometimes that reason is 6 months of cold that feels personal. If you enjoyed this list, hit like, subscribe for more uncomfortable truths, and comment which town you'd survive or avoid like your heating bill depends on it.